With me over the next hour to take your questions, Gillian Keegan, Conservative MP for Chichester, Lord Charlie Falconer, former Labour Justice Secretary, Mark Fox from the Business Services Association, and Michael Walker, editor at Novara Media. Keith is in Chorley. Hello, Keith.
Hello, Iain. Hi, thank you for having me on. Hello to the panel. So I wanted to start a bit of a discussion, and I also had a question about some of the recent events that have been happening down in Birmingham. As you're probably aware, there's been protests about the teaching of same-sex relationships by some members of the Muslim community in Birmingham. So I should probably start a little bit about what my position is on it. I think
try and be as brief as you can, Keith, because we haven't got a huge amount of time.
Okay, I don't have my own spot. I'm only joking. Right, so obviously the British culture is one that's as the bedrock of being, an inclusive society. Do you not think that the government should be taking a stronger stance on this? And if they should be taking a stronger stance, what should they be doing? Should they be looking to mandate the teaching of same-sex relationships?
Okay.
And how would they go about doing that?
All right, Keith, thank you very much. Gillian, let's come to you first. I don't know if you were in the Commons yesterday when Angela Eagle made a very emotional speech saying, look, we came out of the closet a long time ago. We're not going to go back in. Do you think that government action is needed here?
I think where this came up from was there was some government action. So there were some new guidelines about sex education. And basically it was saying that children should be taught about different types of relationships, two mums, two dads, different sort of family structures from a young age. So it just becomes completely, even if they don't know anybody, it's just completely natural, completely accepted from the get-go. So that was new guidance. And then there was more about sex education, basically, for those children in the last couple of years at school, and it was being made mandatory because you couldn't have 16-year-olds effectively leaving without having had any sex education. So that's, I think, what led to this in the first place. And it's completely right. We are a very inclusive society, and I think we move also very quickly as a society. There was a lot of people who were worried about gay marriage whenever it was a decade or so ago, and now it's completely 100% celebrated pretty much across the country. So we are an inclusive society, and I think it is right. There are still some children, perhaps, though, who could potentially be bullied at school. I mean, my cousin, her child did suffer from some bullying at school because he had two mums. So maybe it is just worthwhile making sure that young children do understand that families come in all different shapes.
Michael.
Well, I think homophobic bullying in secondary schools especially is rife. So I don't think we should understate the extent to which inclusive education is absolutely required. And I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be mandated by the government, and Ofsted, when they do inspections, should make sure that teachers are teaching people about the diversity of relationships that people can find themselves in. I do think there's a bit of a danger in, I feel like some of the phrasing of the question was trying to pitch a Muslim community against LGBT people. I think, for one, we talk about Britain as being an inclusive society, but we've got to remember that what these people are protesting about is the teaching of homosexual relationships in school, and that was illegal in Britain until the early noughties.
Which they aren't being taught in that primary school, are they?
Is that not what they're being taught?
No, they're just being taught about relationships.
That's why it's come up, because there's new guidelines and they don't want to implement.
But what I'm saying is that in any case, it's not uniquely British that we are liberal when it comes to different kinds of relationships, because we as a society banned it in the early noughties. And also, as a gay man, I have a lot of gay friends and I have a lot of gay Muslim friends. So I think it's very important that we don't pitch two communities against each other, whilst being absolutely clear that there's no reason why the government should not make sure that all schools teach this with no excuses.
Well, that's where it came from, those guidelines, new guidelines from the government.
Mark Fox.
So I think the more information, the better. I think it should be taught in the context of all the different religious faiths, insight and views on all of this as well. But
Why?
Because I think you want to have as much information as possible.
What's it got to do with religion? This is about relationships.
As much information as possible, because it helps informs people understanding of what's happening and what's going on with themselves and what's going on around them. But myself,
it's religious bigotry that has led us to this situation where 5-year-olds are having to run a gauntlet outside a primary school in Birmingham.
But that, Iain, is a perfectly legitimate view, and that's informed by lifelong learning and experience. And all I'm saying is, that the more information, the better. And I would also like us not just to talk about teachers, but parents and families that come in all sorts of shapes and sizes, that have all sorts of people who are members, also helping to shape the environment in which children are learning and understanding and evolving.
Charlie?
I think it raises a very profound question, because the question is a gay relationship bad? And what the people demonstrating outside the primary school were saying, it was bad. Just like Tim Farron was saying it's bad because of Christianity. Just like the Catholic adoption societies said when we introduced provision whereby same-sex couples could adopt. They were saying it's bad. And Michael says don't set the gay community against particular religious groups. Our society has to have a stance on gay relationships, and our stance has got to be they are acceptable, not just acceptable, they are normal, and there's nothing different about them. And that's the society in which we live, and in a sense that's got to be the way that people are taught. We would never tolerate the idea, well, because there are certain sects that regard women as inferior, it's perfectly okay not to teach the equality of the sexes in certain schools. And so both Michael and Mark were slightly flirting with the idea it's okay.
What were you going to say then?
For groups that think basically gay relationships are bad, and they can sort of get passes from that. And that's a very dangerous.
Lord Falconer, of course, is a very skilled advocate. He's smooth.
I hope I misunderstood.
He's a silk that is as smooth as, right? But he's not going to try and trip me, and I suspect Michael, over his smart and smooth.
But why did you say it was a
words.
legitimate view?
I'd never the word legitimate or view never came
I misunderstood
out of
you.
my mouth.
I thought you were saying
that was very different from what I was saying. I'm saying it should be universal in all schools, no ifs, no buts.
Okay.
But I think it's risky when callers or people in society talk about this as an issue about one community versus another.
Just to back up the point I was making about religious bigotry, Martin Ross has texted me saying, I'm a Christian, not a Muslim, but I totally support the Muslim parents' stance against young kids being given these books. Too much ground has been conceded to the LGBT zealots. Mark Fox.
So as a Christian, when I
is that
came
a legitimate view?
Pause. As a Christian, when I came and read at your wedding, I think you speak by action and by example, and you do not take...
I'm not accusing you of being a bigot,
but
I should make that very clear.
In the same way as we do not suggest that Lord Falconer is anti-Semitic because some of his political colleagues are, we do not tar all Christians, Muslims, Jews and people of religious faith with the views of a few.
But my question is it an illegitimate view? Does it become okay to say gay relationships are bad because you do it on the basis of Christianity?
No, of course it isn't.
So it's just as bad for a Christian to say it?
Of course it isn't.
Okay.
Of course it isn't. But neither, Iain, should you tar all Christians as bigots.
I didn't tar all Christians as bigots. I said that religious bigotry is part of the problem here. That doesn't tar everyone with the same brush.
Some